The Laughing General. The war room aboard the Crucifier was built for intimidation. 20 meters tall, walled in polished obsidian alloy, it reflected the holographic star charts like glowing veins across a blackened skull. At its center stood General Zeldar, Supreme Commander of the Ninth Imperial Fleet, robed in the scarlet armor of conquest, flanked by his personal guard, each a silent brute bred for war and loyalty. He laughed, loud, guttural, a sound more like a beast than a man. The assembled governors and admirals joined in, though none as heartily as the general. Some laughed out of loyalty, most out of fear. "It is absurd," Zeldar bellowed. "They sent a diplomat, a woman, no less, requesting negotiations over prisoners of war. Humans, making demands." He waved a clawed hand, and the central hollow table shifted to display Earth's ambassadorial shuttle, en route to the Empire's capital. Tiny and unarmed, it glided toward a monstrous orbital station surrounded by cruisers the size of cities. "Let me guess," scoffed Admiral Voslek, his 6 eyes narrowing. "They bring peace treaties, laws, and ethics, charming distractions for the naive." "Indeed," Zeldar grinned. "They think there's a rule book. They think this is still their Earth-centric game of morality. But this," he tapped the talon against the star map, zooming in on the rim colonies, now marked with the Empire's crimson emblem, "is reality. And reality obeys power, not principles." The room erupted with cruel laughter once more. Zeldar gestured again. A series of data streams and stills appeared. Human Marines, shackled and bloodied. POW camps that looked more like mining pits. One short clip of prisoners herded into an airlock before the feed abruptly cut. "This is what becomes of those who resist the Empire," he declared. "They cry about treaties, about codes of war, but they forget we never signed them." Someone cleared their throat softly. All heads turned as a diplomatic aide stepped into the chamber, unusually bold to interrupt. "General," the aide said, bowing low, "the human envoy has arrived. She requests an audience with the Imperial Council." Zeldar's grin widened. "Excellent. Bring her in." 2 hours later, Imperial Council Hall. The vast chamber was built like a throne room, with tiered seats for council members and a raised platform for guests. Surveillance drones floated silently overhead. In the center stood Ambassador Cassandra Vale, a tall woman in a simple black diplomatic uniform. Her face was composed, but her dark eyes carried a storm behind them. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, clipped, and deliberate. "I represent the United Terran Federation," she said. "Under the Galactic Accord of 9217, ratified by 37 civilizations, including yours, we are here to negotiate the return of our prisoners of war." The Emperor did not attend. Neither did most of the council. But General Zeldar lounged in the primary chair, armored boots propped on the railing, a cruel smirk on his face. "I commend your bravery, Ambassador," he sneered, "flying here in that fragile toy of a shuttle. But you wasted your time. Your soldiers are no longer a concern." "I'll need clarification on that," Cassandra replied, unblinking. "Our last contact with the POW camp was 3 standard days ago." Zeldar feigned a sigh. He raised his hand and nodded toward a data console. The chamber's lights dimmed, and a projection hovered into view. The footage began with a human transport ship surrounded by drones. There was a muffled alert, then the sound of an airlock breach. Bodies, spinning, silent. The video ended. Zeldar spoke with mock solemnity. "A tragic malfunction. A most unfortunate accident." Cassandra remained still. Behind her, members of her small Terran entourage flinched. One young lieutenant balled his fists, jaw trembling. Cassandra finally spoke. "You killed our prisoners of war." Her words landed like a shockwave. No rage, no screaming, just cold, brutal truth. Even among the Empire's court, silence followed. A few lesser diplomats looked nervously at one another. Zeldar leaned forward, eyes glittering. They were enemies of the Empire. They served no purpose alive. Cassandra nodded slowly, almost respectfully. "You are now in direct violation of 3 major interstellar laws, 2 treaties, and 7 wartime conduct agreements." Zeldar laughed again. Laws? Treaties? Please, Ambassador. Do you think this galaxy is ruled by words? Cassandra met his gaze without blinking. No, she said quietly. I think this galaxy is about to learn what happens when words fail. She tapped a small device on her wrist and whispered one word. Initiate. The guards looked confused. Zeldar laughed louder. Cassandra turned to leave. You should enjoy your laughter while it lasts, she said. It's the last time you'll find it easy. You killed our prisoners of war. The diplomatic shuttle Trucekeeper was silent on its return to the neutral zone. Not a word passed between the crew as the vast Imperial capital receded behind them. A colossus of steel, cruelty, and pride. Ambassador Cassandra Vale sat alone in the forward observation chamber, watching stars drift across the void. Her reflection stared back from the glass, pale, still, but not fragile. In her hands, she held a small holodrive. It contained the footage the Empire had so casually broadcast in the council chamber. The last moments of over 400 captured Terran soldiers. Her brother, Lieutenant Marcus Vale, had been aboard that transport. She hadn't flinched when the bodies had tumbled into the void. She couldn't afford to. But now, her fingers tightened around the drive. She closed her eyes and inhaled slowly. Ma'am, the voice was soft, hesitant. Lieutenant Arroyo stood just outside the doorway, his face pale. Yes, Lieutenant. Orders, ma'am? After everything. Cassandra stood and faced him. The order's been given. You mean? Yes. Operation Retribution has begun. Earth, United Terran Federation Defense Command. Deep beneath the oceans of Europa, in a classified orbital installation cloaked from all known forms of detection, humanity's most dangerous weapons weren't nuclear. They were quiet, clean, precise. Admiral Carabo stared at the encrypted message from Cassandra Vale, transmitted seconds after she left the council. Initiate. He turned to his operations chief. Run Ghost Protocols Alpha through Gamma. Deploy Task Force Retribution. No mercy. No prisoners. Acknowledged, sir. Targets. Carabo's voice was made of iron. Start with the ones who laughed. Imperial Core Worlds, 12 hours later. General Zeldar awoke to sirens. His quarters, deep within the planetary command center of Ornaxis Prime, were considered impenetrable. Guarded by elite Drakari shock troops, AI defense webs, and 4 separate biometric locks. None of that mattered. The lights flickered. Screens went black. A high-pitched whine filled the air, the kind that only signaled one thing: system-wide cyber intrusion. Zeldar barked into his comms. Status report. Who authorized this test? No one responded. He tried again. Still silence. Then his personal datapad lit up with a single message in bold Terran standard. You killed our prisoners of war. He snarled and reached for his weapon, but the chamber's lights went dead. Moments later, a side wall exploded inward. From the smoke stepped 3 black-armored Terran commandos, silent, ghost-like, their armor shimmering with adaptive cloaking residue. One razor rifle. Zeldar lunged, roaring, and everything went black. Aboard the Avenger-class dreadnought, UNS Gallows. Captain Mira Holt, Task Force Retribution. Cassandra Vale stood before a massive holomap, displaying a growing wave of red markers. Imperial systems falling offline. AI-controlled drones had overridden planetary defense codes. Communications were jammed. Entire naval fleets disabled without firing a shot. Captain Holt turned to Cassandra. The window's open. All major warlords have been located. We'll hit them simultaneously. Status of Zeldar? Detained. Alive. Just barely. Want us to finish him? Cassandra didn't respond immediately. She looked out at the stars. No. Bring him to Earth. He's going to answer to something greater than revenge. Imperial broadcast, hijacked galactic-wide. Screens across the galaxy flickered. Civilians and soldiers alike turned toward the unexpected broadcast. A woman stood at the center of the transmission, Ambassador Cassandra Vale. Behind her, rows of holographic portraits floated, images of fallen POWs, each with a name and rank. Her voice was calm. Her words were surgical. I am Cassandra Vale of Earth. 3 days ago, Over 400 human prisoners of war were executed by the Galactic Empire in clear violation of every law governing interstellar conflict. They laughed. They mocked us. They believed humanity was weak. No more. She paused, then pointed to the rows of portraits. These are their names, their faces, their stories. Remember them. The screen flickered again, now showing images of the captured warlords, bloodied and stunned. Zeldar among them, beaten, cuffed, kneeling. Cassandra returned to view. We did not come to conquer. We came to speak. But when our words were silenced, we made sure our message would be heard. Humanity is not weak. We are patient. We are measured. But we never forget our dead. Back aboard the Trucekeeper, Arroyo stood next to Cassandra at the observation window. They'll fear us now, he said quietly. Cassandra nodded. They should. But more than fear, they'll learn. Learn what? That we may speak softly, but we're never unarmed. She opened her holodrive one last time and played a short video. Her brother Marcus, laughing in a field back on Earth. Training drills. Eating MREs. Grinning into the camera. Rest now, she whispered. We heard you. The consequences of laughter. The Empire didn't fall in a day, but it began crumbling in one. Aboard the UNS Gallows, humanity's most advanced dreadnought, the bridge pulsed with quiet intensity. Dozens of officers moved with synchronized precision. Task Force Retribution wasn't a blunt weapon, it was a scalpel, and the operation had already cut deep. 16 Imperial relay stations are dark, reported Lieutenant Cowrie. They haven't even figured out how we got into their command mesh. Captain Mira Holt grinned. That's because we didn't get in. We built a back door into their AI spine years ago. They never saw us coming. Ambassador Cassandra Vale stood beside her, arms crossed, watching the holomap update in real time. Entire sectors of the Empire blinked red, signaling complete loss of control. Warlords disappeared. Bases went dark. Military traffic jammed into silence. Send the next wave, Cassandra said. We have one day before they reorganize. Targets? Asked Holt. Not fleets. Not factories. Hit their prisons. Sector G19. Imperial Penal Facility 412. The Maw. A remote asteroid prison orbiting a red dwarf star. No sunlight. No escape. No hope. Until now. The guards noticed first. Doors unlocking on their own. Lights pulsing red. Then came the sirens. Then the screaming. From above, 3 Terran stealth shuttles descended, silent as shadows. Inside, liberated prisoners, some human, some alien, gasped at the first fresh air they'd tasted in months. Medical drones patched bleeding wounds. Combat droids escorted survivors out. No shots were fired. No alarms remained. As the last evac shuttle departed, the prison's AI core detonated, collapsing the asteroid in on itself. 3 more prisons followed within the hour. Vernaxis Prime, Imperial Capital, War Room. The Empire's highest surviving officials gathered under flickering lights, their voices raised in desperation. They shut down our planetary shield from light years away. Our orbital network was hijacked. How did they breach our encryption? We've lost control of 3 sectors. At the center of the chaos, High Admiral Krell pounded a fist on the table. Where is Zeldar? He started this madness. Captured, someone muttered. Alive, but barely. They say the humans want him to stand trial. Trial? Krell hissed. They want a trial for a warlord? No one laughed. Earth, global broadcast, Human United Government Headquarters. The world watched as General Zeldar was led into the tribunal chamber. His once pristine armor was scorched and cracked. He limped, a broken shadow of the towering conqueror who had once mocked humanity. He didn't laugh now. His eyes darted across the human faces in the gallery. Military officers, civilians, survivors of the Rim colonies. No fear in their expressions. Only judgment. Cassandra Vale stood before the tribunal as lead prosecutor. General Zeldar, you are charged with the willful execution of 438 human prisoners of war, she said, her voice steady. You violated the Galactic War Accords. You mocked every civilized standard of decency and honor. And then you laughed. She turned to the council. Let's be clear. This is not about revenge. It is about justice. For humans. For all sentients who have suffered under the Empire's reign. A murmur of agreement swept the chamber. Among the observers sat representatives of formerly subjugated species, watching, listening, hoping. Across the galaxy, a spark of rebellion. The human broadcast had lit a fire. On mining worlds, workers threw down their tools and picked up arms. On fringe colonies, alien governors declared independence from the Empire. Pirate bands once loyal to imperial trade routes now smuggled supplies to resistance cells. But more powerful than weapons was the message. They killed our prisoners. We answered, and we will not be silenced again. Aboard the UNS Gallows, Captain Holt reviewed the day's success metrics with a grim smile. 77% of the Empire's outer defense systems compromised. 53 resistance signals from alien colonies. Even their propaganda networks are collapsing. And casualties? Cassandra asked. Holt's face darkened. 3 dead, 1 wounded, all on the last prison run. Imperial guards got lucky with a turret override. Cassandra bowed her head. We don't forget our dead. Not even one. No, ma'am. She turned to the holoscreen. Begin Phase 3. Strike the command centers, but keep the hospitals intact. We don't punish civilians. Only tyrants. Imperial Border Station 09, final broadcast. An Imperial security technician leaned over a broken console. Static washed across the screen, then gave way to a final human message. To those still loyal to the Empire, surrender now. You will be treated with dignity. Resist, and you will share your leader's fate. It wasn't said with fury. It was said with certainty. The technician dropped his rifle and raised his hands. Earth, post-trial, Cassandra Vale's office. The verdict was unanimous. Zeldar would spend the rest of his life in isolation, his testimony used as evidence to prosecute dozens more. But his real punishment was worse. Watching the Empire unravel from a cell, piece by piece. Cassandra stood at her office window, overlooking the Earth's peaceful horizon. Arroyo entered quietly. Reports say 4 more colonies declared independence today. They're calling us liberators. Cassandra nodded. They'll call us worse before it's over. But they'll never call us weak again. The price of arrogance. The Galactic Empire didn't die with an explosion. It died with a silence, the kind that follows after the shouting, when the truth becomes too loud to ignore. In the weeks following the tribunal of General Zeldar, empire after empire began to distance themselves from the crumbling regime. Treaties were revoked, alliances broken, supply lines seized not by humans, but by the very alien species the Empire had once crushed underboot. The galactic map changed color. Not with conquest, but with collapse. The Terran Federation hadn't needed to invade 1,000 worlds. All it had to do was show the galaxy what the Empire truly was, and what humanity had become. Vornaxis Prime, once the Empire's crown jewel, now a fractured world. Once proud cities flickered in and out of power. Planetary governors begged for off-world aid. Starships that once carried soldiers now carried refugees. Cassandra Vale stood aboard the orbiting medical cruiser Solace, watching the wounded come in by the hundreds. Not all were human. Many were non-human civilians who had never lifted a weapon, only suffered from proximity to imperial rule. Dr. Reen, a scaled Altari physician, turned to her. You don't act like a conqueror, he said quietly. I'm not one, Cassandra replied. I'm just someone who got tired of watching tyrants laugh while the innocent died. Reen offered a faint nod. Many of us were waiting for someone to speak back. Cassandra looked out at the starfield beyond the viewport. We didn't speak. We answered. Earth, Memorial Dome, Geneva. A vast monument stood under the open sky, the circle of names. Every soldier who died in captivity, every prisoner executed, their names etched in steel, encircling a single quote in the center. You killed our prisoners of war. Ambassador Cassandra Vale, Terran Tribunal, 2291. Families visited in silence. Some left flowers. Others left datapads, medals, dog tags. Among them stood a woman in civilian dress, brushing her fingers over a single name, Lieutenant Marcus Vale. Cassandra didn't cry. Not here. She'd cried alone, behind closed doors in silence. Here, she simply remembered. Your death wasn't meaningless, she whispered. None of them were. Trial of the Imperial High Council. First Unified Galactic Tribunal. It took weeks of preparation and dozens of star systems cooperation. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy held a trial not of vengeance, but of justice. Former governors, fleet commanders, camp overseers, every one of them once laughed at humanity, at the idea of consequence, at the notion that the weak had power. They weren't laughing now. They were chained, tried, found guilty, not executed, but sentenced to labor, rebuilding the colonies they had once scorched, rebuilding what they had destroyed, not for redemption, but for accountability. That was the price of arrogance. United Terran Federation, Security Council Address. Cassandra stood before Earth's Security Council one final time, not as a diplomat, not as a prosecutor, but as a symbol. The Terran Federation will not replace the Empire, she declared. We do not seek a throne made of the bones of tyrants. We seek a future where laughter does not follow murder, where treaties are more than paper, where weakness is not permission for cruelty. She paused. The chamber was still. We speak not just for humans, but for all who were silenced. And we will remember what silence cost us. 10 years later, Vernaxis Memorial Park. The former imperial capital had been transformed, not into a fortress, but a place of healing. Children played beneath restored trees. Alien and human diplomats met in open-air forums. The site of the old war room, once the stage of Zeldhar's mocking laughter, was now a museum of remembrance. At the center stood a statue, a Terran woman, standing tall, holding a datapad in one hand and a broken chain in the other. Engraved below, they laughed until we answered. Cassandra Vale visited only once a year. She never stayed long, just enough to remind herself what they'd fought for, and what they must never become. Final scene, Outer Rim Relay Station. A young cadet in the Terran Navy sat at his post, monitoring transmissions across newly liberated sectors. A coded message blinked onto his screen, a distress signal from a minor colony raided by rogue pirates, remnants of the old Imperial French. He tapped into the comm and spoke clearly. Hold your ground. Help is coming. The Federation remembers. He looked up at the stars, eyes gleaming with something old, something hard-earned, not vengeance, but resolve. Because humanity had learned its lesson, and the galaxy had learned this. We may be slow to anger. We may come in peace. But when the innocent are silenced, humanity will speak for them, loudly, clearly, and forever.